texted me about 45 minutes ago, so
Wired into other things clock.
at like 6:36.
Is that not working?
Yeah, initially you thought he'd make it for the
Okay.
work session, but I don't know what's going on. So he'll be here soon because this is a big topic for him.
Beat you.
All right, ready? Great. Calling to order the August 5th, 2026 meeting of the Long Lake City Council. It is 6:30 p.m. All council members are present this evening with the exception of Councilmember Dyvik. He'll probably be pulling in here in about 5 or 10 minutes. He's coming from another event across the other side of the cities. So item 2 is the Pledge of Allegiance. Please join me in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, item 3 is mayor's comments, Long Lake News, meeting review and updates. So it's been very busy the last couple of weeks in Long Lake. We're kind of in the heart of the summer now. A lot of great events going on that I just want to recap and give some shout outs to. Buckhorn Days was last Saturday on the 25th, sponsored by the Long Lake Area Chamber of Commerce and the Orono Lions as well. Thanks to all those that put on a great event that day. It was there. I know several council members were there as well. It was a little bit on the hot side, but we can't control the weather. But some great music, some food and beverages, all-star wrestling or some kind of a wrestling event was there. That's always second annual deal there, and it's interesting to see that and the costumes they wear and all of that. So that was a great event. Appreciate all those that made that event happen. On Monday, just a couple of days ago, many of the council members were also at the Shoreline Fire Department's inaugural pinning ceremony. So this is where all firefighters were sort of pinned as being officially members of the department. They also had some promotions as well, recognized those in leadership positions. I spoke there, the mayor of Orono spoke as well as a number of the firefighter leadership. And it's great to see that all come together after years of trying to, get the jointly operated fire department pulled together. Great event. Everybody's in brand spanking new uniforms and patches and new logos on their trucks and things like that. So really great event, and their families were there, and we all thank them on behalf of our councils and the community for the firefighters serving our community as they do. Last night was Night to Unite, annual event across the country, really, where communities got together to talk about safety issues, have first responders show up in their neighborhoods. So Wayzata Police was involved in Long Lake here, and then Shoreline Fire as well. And I went around to several events in neighborhoods in about 8 different spots and visited neighbors and talked about safety and other events other city topics. City staff joined as well, so we appreciated that. I know you got some good feedback, and it's amazing how many community members know you as well, just either talking to you both of you on the phone or come in here to City Hall to chit chat with you. So it's fun to see people acknowledge our staff as well and the great work that you do. So that was last night. We were not supposed to have a council meeting last night, but first Tuesday of the month, and that was pushed back to tonight because of Night to Unite. And then coming up this Saturday is Corn Days at the Church of St. George, 8:30 a.m. to 9 p.m. Again, a great annual event. There'll be a parade there as well, sponsored by Long Lake Area Chamber of Commerce. I think the gentleman standing out in the lobby right now, Marty Schneider, organizes that. So thanks to Marty. Marty's been very busy here the last week or two organizing 2 great events, as well as the Church of St. George. So please come out to that event on Saturday. And the parade starts at 11. It used to start at noon, but a couple years ago it got pushed back to 11. So don't be late for the parade. So lots going on in Long Lake. Great, just a sign of our great small town here and having those types of events in the summertime. All right, and Councilmember Dyvik has joined us now, so welcome, Councilmember Dyvik.
Thank you.
With that, we'll move on to item 4, which is to approve this evening's agenda. Entertain a motion on that.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second that.
All right, motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Item 5, open correspondence. Open correspondence is an item on the agenda in which the public may address the city council. No formal action is taken by the city council, and comments are limited to 5 minutes or less. And open correspondence comments may also be emailed to city staff by noon on the date of the meeting. So if you wish to approach for open comments this evening, please do so. I just ask that you state your name and address.
Honorable Mayor, members of the council, city staff, Brian Miller, 295 Lakeview Avenue. Curb and gutter, chapter 37. No, I just want to stay on top of this topic because as you do your plans for the roads and stuff like that, I want to make sure you don't waste any time getting down a road that we, the people, are not going to be wanting to go down with you, object to. So I just want to say a short bit about, it's been floated out to me that there's a notion that curb and gutter causes a person's home to flood, and I simply can't imagine that to be true. For one thing, we certainly would have heard about that over the past 100 years on Lakeview Avenue. And curb and gutter would have been installed long ago. So I want to go back in time. Back when I moved in, on my insurance it said flood zone. I'm in a flood zone, which seemed odd to me because I'm like the highest point in Long Lake, maybe the second highest. Fast forward a couple more years, I'm standing in my backyard with Marv Werzer, the great Marv Werzer. I'm looking at redoing my deck, and he's telling me I got to go down 42 inches. And if I do it, he wants to come and see it because he wants to see if there's water at that level. He wants to see if there's clay or what there is. So I agreed to do that. And I borrowed a post hole digger from Tim Haltman, and I started digging. I got about a foot, and I said, no, I'm not doing this. So anyways, fast forward a few more years, Donnie Gaspar, the nephew of Ella Gaspar, who owned my home originally, moved to a retirement facility in Maple Plain in the 1980s. Donnie took over. There was neglect in the house flooded. And it flooded due to the high water table. And there's damage down below there. So, you know, I have a sump pump. Everyone has a sump pump up here. Everyone over on this side of Brown Road that has curb and gutter has sump pumps. And I don't want that to be mistaken. And I hope that Mr. Whisker can perhaps counter what I have to say if he feels differently. Three other things I want to say is Corn Days. Last meeting, you guys were talking about using the Long Lake Fire Department truck, and Councilmember Newcomer questioned the vehicle reading Long Lake Fire Department, and Councilmember Diavec responded with, "You can't change history." And I love you for that because that's exactly what I'm trying to say about Lakeview Avenue. It's the last historic spot we have in Long Lake, aside from a couple of places down here in town. And also, what may be appropriate for the watershed district is on the 4th of July, I was riding my bike around down in the city, dressed as Paul Revere, shouting that the British are coming, and no cars in the parking lots, no one on the streets. I noticed it is just complete concrete and asphalt, and it was a mini heat island. So I saw his plans for the city in the future, and I also have one other comment about that. Jeanette had mentioned a couple of months ago, I think you said that gravel driveways are banned in Long Lake now. People like myself are grandfathered in with hardcover concerns that everybody has these days and runoff and all that sort of stuff. I hope the city would reconsider maybe change that a bit and go a little bit softer. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Next, yes, sir.
Mayor, Council, Marty Schneider, 1176 West Wayzata Boulevard. On behalf of the Chamber and the Orono Lions, really here to thank you, all of you, for a wonderful Corn Days experience, right? Depending who we're talking to. It really, I think, was emblematic of a great collaboration. The city, Amanda, Jeanette, for the first time ever, had a booth at Corn Days, which was really just nice for the community.
You mean Buckhorn Days?
Buckhorn Days, excuse me. Also, the Waters Association was there, the Rowing Club was there, Three Rivers Park District. So just a great afternoon, topped off by, of course, some good music and wrestling. And Councilwoman Qualley, very much involved in the planning for, once again, Buckhorn Days. So thank you again for all the cooperation on the city level. Really meant a lot to, I think, not only us, but everyone. And then, as you mentioned before, Mayor Minor, coming up here in 2 days, Saturday the 8th, parade will start at 11 a.m. for Corn Days. And we have a really wonderful representation from the fire department, the Shoreview Fire Department, Shoreline Fire Department, all new, and spoke with the chief. They're going to have every unit in the parade. I know that there's kind of a cooperative effort between some of the members from Orono Council or Fire District Planning Committee, as well as Long Lake. So I think it'll be a wonderful day and wonderful experience. So again, we just really wanted to express our thanks for supporting both events. Thank you.
Thank you, Marty. Thanks for all you've done with both those great events. Any others for open comment? Come on up, sir. Yep.
Hi, my name is Richard Carter at 1948 West Wayzata, number 119. And it's briefly a comment, maybe a question or two, a concern. The motorized vehicles on the sidewalk, I don't know how you can enforce that. So there are, as you know, 57 residences in our building. And so I'm speaking on behalf of the walking group to some degree. I've only had one near miss flyby recently over in front of the gym, and a teenager, maybe middle school. And, you know, you're supposed to slow down and, you know, announce you're passing on the right. And he yelled in my ear as he went by, and I said, "You're using this as a game." And he said, "You can't talk to me like that." Well, so off he went. But we were on Brown 2 days ago, day before yesterday, and two girls on an e-scooter, at least. They were on the fog line. They weren't on the trail that goes from Wayzata down to number 6. So, which is posted as no motorized vehicles, right? To the degree you all do that in the city, I'm not sure. So with that, I don't know what Orono does or Wayzata. Here we are in the middle. I can't imagine how you would enforce it. The young kid yesterday going at least 20 miles an hour in front of our vet's office over on the street on his way down to the Rooster. So that's my comment. Don't know. But it's an issue, I've got to say, particularly for, those of us walking, I'm in my 80s, and some of us walking, with different forms of issues out on the sidewalk. I don't know how you deal with it, but it ain't going away, I'm sure. So.
Yeah, we'll ask that staff pass those concerns on to our police department, Wayzata Police Department. And just to be clear, where's the area that you said where it's posted no motorized vehicles, Richard? Sorry, are you talking about the park? Going down
Well, the signage that's posted, I'm just talking about the signage that's posted over on Brown between Wayzata and 6.
That's an
That's
Orono.
Orono.
Oh,
That's
okay.
Orono, I know. So that's my question.
I see what you're saying.
We've been here 2.5 years now. We moved in, so I'm not familiar with the law enforcement of the two adjacent communities, but I see their police vehicles, in our neighborhood as well. So to the degree you guys trade, coverage, but I can't imagine how it would be enforceable, because you all don't have licenses for bicycles or anything, do you?
I think it's becoming clear that it is we need to see some state law changes in order to provide
Thanks.
the enforcement agencies with the tools necessary to be able to conduct enforcement. And I think that's what we're, as we're seeing the prevalence of, e-bikes and motorized scooters and such. I think, I don't think I'm overstepping to say I think police departments, especially for local communities, would agree that more state law changes and regulation of those particular items
Sure.
would help them in their jobs as they're trying to conduct enforcement and being mindful of pedestrian safety. So I think we need to see some change at the state law level. And I couldn't encourage anyone enough or more to feel free to reach out to their local legislators
That's
and
great.
suggest that. Because, their job is to
Yeah.
listen to their constituents, so.
Yeah, we've been lobbying for that too as a city, and we work with a lot of Lake Minnetonka area cities. It's really affected the whole Lake Minnetonka area and even the metro area as far as e-bikes and that sort of thing. So there was a law that was passed this session that was more about helmets, but it's definitely an issue, and you're not the first person to bring it
Yeah.
up.
I mean, the two girls over on Brown, they didn't have helmets, but, that's family values. That's up to them. But to the degree we have, for example, Mrs. Brazil is coming to talk in our building coming up soon. She has 4 kids. So I will mention that to our walking groups. I mean, literally to ask her to go to the state because it's a safety issue, isn't it? It really is for the rest of us.
If they could help provide the tools for our local law enforcement, it would make a real big difference, I think, out there.
Thank you very much.
And thank you, Richard.
I love living in the community. I just love it.
We love having your community here. Thank you. All right, anyone else? No comments? Okay, with that then, and no other submitted emailed open correspondence, I'm assuming?
Thank you.
Okay. All right, then we'll move on to item number 6, consent agenda. We have items A through F on the consent agenda this evening, including Corn Days 5K run and walk this Saturday, special event permit for Farmhouse Live Outdoor Music Recital on August 30th. And item F is our accepting bids for our 2026 sanitary lining project and authorization advertising for bids.
I'll make a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda. Second.
All right, motion and a second. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Consent agenda is approved. Thank you. Okay, then we'll move on to regular business, item 7. Items starting with 7A, approved contract with Hakinson, Anderson Associates Incorporated to provide city engineering services. Sorry if I got that. Amanda, turn it over to you.
Thank you. So if council recall, at the last work session that we had, I invited the engineering firm of Hawkinson Anderson Associates to present to council a little bit about their firm and specifically about Steve, who would be our proposed engineer. And after feedback from council, tonight I'm proposing that council approves entering into a contract with the city engineering services, Hawkinson Anderson and Associates, effective immediately. And also to authorize the mayor and myself to execute this agreement subject to final revisions by myself and our city attorney, formally designating Hawkinson Anderson as our engineer going forward.
All right, I know we talked about this a lot at the last meeting and got a presentation from Hawkinson and a couple staff members, so that was appreciative and informative.
Is Hawkinson here tonight?
Yes.
They are.
Oh,
So
okay.
Yes.
Steve is with us. One thing I should mention that I just noticed in my report, Hawkinson Anderson would begin engineering, as I mentioned, effective immediately on future projects. I have talked to WSB and we will continue working with WSB on existing projects to make sure that those are finalized smoothly. And those projects, off the top of my head, include the sewer lining project, which was, as you saw in tonight's consent items, we're going out for bid on that again. So we are going to be sewer lining of phase 1 of that project. So WSB will continue assisting us with that, and they will be assisting us with any other on current engineering projects that they are working on. And then Hawkinson Anderson will be picking up from this point forward. So does
Good
council have any
clarification.
questions for me?
The only question I had is what I referenced.
Yes,
before, but I-
as Councilmember Qualley mentioned, we are going to make sure that the contract states that we have ownership of any documentation that is created on our behalf. Is that correct? I did actually mention it to Steve prior to the meeting, and he said that is extremely common, but we will make sure that it gets included in the contract before execution.
Thanks.
So.
Great.
Does our contract with, for engineering with WSB run until a certain date, or or can we end it whenever we want?
Well, actually, it was at the next meeting, you will actually be signing a contract with WSB because they realized recently that we are not under contract with them, that was overlooked in the last few years. And so they've been asking me recently to make sure that we do get a contract signed.
For planning?
Well, we don't have a contract at all. So.
But I mean, we're
That's what
we're
we-
Yes,
ending
so at the
engineering
next-
side.
At the next meeting, you're going to actually sign a contract that states that they will be doing engineering as needed, and that will cover those those projects that I was mentioning.
Sewer lining.
The sewer lining, I believe they might be helping us with a little bit of lead service completion, and some existing building projects. So that you will see an engineering contract from them that states that it's on as needed basis. As we also mentioned in a work session, we may need them a little bit for some comp planning situation, so that contract would cover that. And then there will be a second contract that will cover continuing planning service with WSB.
And I note that this one is terminable by either party with 30 days
30-day notice.
written notice, so.
Yes, and I've made sure that our city attorney, John Thames, is aware of the situation and has reviewed both contracts. He is on vacation this week, and so that is why you're not able to see them simultaneously, because he had not had a chance to make some final revisions on the WSB contract, and I explained to him that I would feel comfortable bringing that to the next meeting once we make sure that it's ready for signature. So tonight we will just be approving entering into the contract for future services with Hawkinson, Anderson and Associates.
All right, thank you. Any other questions for staff or for Steve is here?
Yes, I apologize. Steve is here today to answer questions.
Otherwise, entertain a motion on this one.
I'll make a motion to approve entering into a contract for city engineering services with Hawkinson Anderson Associates, Inc., effective immediately, to authorize the mayor and city administrator to execute the agreement subject to any final revisions by staff and the city attorney, and formally designate Hawkinson Anderson Associates, Inc., as the Long Lake City engineer upon full execution of the agreement.
I can second that motion.
Thank you. Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right, thanks for coming, Steve. Okay, we will move on to item 7B, presentation of draft downtown Long Lake stormwater study by Minnehaha Creek Watershed District, James Whisker, District Administrator. Welcome, James and
Sorry.
Amanda.
I was just gonna let council know that tonight we have the Minnehaha Creek Watershed. They were gonna be presenting us with a Long Lake Creek implementation plan. I have met with Mr. Whisker earlier last week. I can't think of which day it was, probably last week, where he met with myself. Yeah, where he met with myself and our Public Works Director, Sean Dirks, presented us with this information, which both Sean and I are extremely excited for him to presenting to council tonight. And so I welcome James to show you what he has.
Thank you,
Welcome,
Amanda.
James.
Mayor Minor, council members. Thanks for having the Watershed District here. Great to be here with you all again. As a reminder, I think Amanda just introduced me nicely, but James Whisker, Administrator for the Minnehaha Creek Watershed District. I'm joined this evening by our Board President, Sherry White, who's right behind me, and Board Manager Janet Schaefer, and Long Lake resident, and our Director of Projects, Michael Heyman. So if you've got some detailed questions around projects, Mike will be here to field some of those. We've also been fortunate enough, Amanda mentioned, we had some staff connections last week. We've had a couple different other connection points offline in prep for tonight. Mayor Minor and Councilmember Divek at different times were very gracious with their time to dig in and get up to speed. And I just wanted to say on the front end, thank you. And we appreciate your time and the questions that you brought to those meetings and your engagement. For tonight's briefing to council, we've really got three objectives. First, I want to leave everybody with hopefully a clear understanding of the history and the background for the Long Lake Creek subwatershed itself and the partnership among the three cities, Medina, Orono, and Long Lake, as well as the Long Lake Waters Association and the Watershed District. Second, I want to frame how the downtown Long Lake stormwater study, which is in your packet, I brought some hard copies for everybody, how that study fits into that broader restoration strategy alongside work that's underway in some of those other communities, which is outlined in the Long Lake Creek Roadmap. And then third and final, we'll introduce the findings and some of the recommendations of the study. I thought before we jump in and get going, it might be useful to just set the table in terms of what to expect for tonight. I've broken the presentation into a couple different chapters so we can pause along the way if we need to. We've used this briefing structure with staff and I think gotten some good positive feedback about the value in taking some time to just get grounded in the history, build some shared understanding of where the partners have been over several years, many years, where we are now and where we can go in the future working together before we then launch into some of the details of the capital improvement projects that would improve stormwater quality here inside the city of Long Lake. So I just wanted to be clear, we're not looking for commitments or decisions tonight. This is really information, background, grounding, and I think if there's direction to move forward, exploring some of the next steps for the projects that are outlined in the study, we'd work with staff and I think anticipate being back in front of council yet before the end of the year, outlining how we might be able to move forward some of this work together. So hopefully that makes good sense and is a decent plan for tonight. All right, so I wanted to start with the broadest possible context before we drill down into the details in terms of the water quality and the partnership history surrounding Long Lake, the lake. A great place to start seemed to be the Long Lake Waters Association meeting from last fall. I think it was September, October of 2025. A great turnout that night from residents. There were elected leaders there, staff from all three cities, really a packed house. During the meeting, our staff got asked real specifically, what is Minnehaha Creek Watershed District's plan to restore Long Lake? Everything else that I walked through tonight hopefully is an answer to that question. So to begin with, it's important to remind everybody here and at home that are going to watch online, work didn't just start last year. The Watershed District worked in partnership with member communities, Orono, Long Lake, Medina, all the way back in the 90s to implement regional stormwater projects. There's two north of the lake, one on County Road 6, one on Deer Hill in Orono, Medina. There's Nelson Lakeside ponds. Those were built in the 90s with Long Lake. There were some shoreline restoration projects around the lake, and there's even a chemical treatment conducted in the lake. It's called an alum dosing to address excess nutrient moving forward is built on solid foundation, and we're not starting from scratch. Under a mandate from the Federal Clean Water Agency, more clearly defined the size of the problem in Long Lake and some of the other affiliated waters. The ones that are crosshatched here on your screen ended up on what's called the impaired waters list. These are water bodies in the state of Minnesota that don't meet clean water standards. And the Pollution Control Agency completed this total maximum daily load study, which I'll talk about in just a minute. In making that diagnosis that the lake's impaired and what to do about it, they looked at historic data. And this graph really shows some of that data. It's a graph of water quality or nutrient concentration over time, going all the way back to the 90s. And the yellow line in the middle are the state standards for a lake like Long Lake. So you can see there's a lot of dots above the line, and in general, Long Lake doesn't meet water quality standards. That's true all the way back to the 90s. Water quality was quite poor, not meeting standards, but you can see there's still quite a lot of variability year to year, which is normal. Then in 1996, for a few years, the lake started meeting state standards. That was actually the result of that chemical alum treatment that was done that I mentioned on the former slide. This was done in conjunction with those other landscape projects. That lasted, and the good water quality years lasted approximately 36 months, after which the water quality really reverted back to levels that then didn't meet the state standards. Again, here you can see quite a lot of variability year to year. During our pre-meeting that we had with Mayor Miner, he asked a great question about some of the years around 2021, 2023, when the lake intermittently met standards, kind of 2018 to 2023. When we did take a closer look at that, a few things to note on this chart. Since we're so data-driven, I want to start with the science. First, these numbers are averages across the whole season. And that's important because in Long Lake, what we observe is when you have a really wet spring, you can have poor water quality in the spring from algal blooms that are driven by runoff. If you have a really hot, dry summer, you can actually have poor water quality and algal blooms in the fall driven from things coming from inside. Lots are averages of a lot of that variation in the season. And so if you have both of those things happening at the same time, you might have really poor water quality. If you have a good spring and a poor summer, it might average out a little bit. So these are aggregate numbers. The second, in terms of the mayor's question, is you can see the average annual water quality in 2018 actually met state standards. I think you've been asking about how the CARP management and lake management efforts related to lake response. And that was several years before I think based on Long Lake Water's records and ours, the CARP management started in earnest in the lake. I think that was 2021 to 2023. And so while removing CARP, no doubt, is a good thing and good for water quality, I don't think in this instance it's directly correlated to what we're seeing as just a seasonal lake response.
I got a real quick question.
Sure.
When you look at like the wet spring versus a dry, these tend to correlate with other lakes in the area with, those particular 3 years maybe being of better quality?
It's a great question, Councilmember Feldman. Unfortunately, the answer is it depends. We run into this a lot. Lakes are driven by a lot of different characteristics, what you would call their morphometry, which is just how big is the lake and how deep is the lake. That's a big factor. How large is the watershed area? So the lake area to watershed ratio. You can imagine if you've got a really small lake and a massive land area draining to it, that's going to have an influence on how nutrient rich that lake is. So you can draw some correlations, across seasons and across water bodies, but this is really down to individual lakes, individual context. So you might see some similarities, but it's hard to draw direct parallels because there's so many other factors that are involved besides just temperature and rain.
So weak correlations at best.
Yeah, I think so. I think, basically just wanted to point out there's a lot of variation, but I didn't put a trend line on here, but if you squint and you look left to right, I think you can see the compounding effect of those landscape projects and that alum dosing project from the 90s over time. Water quality has shown slow incremental trends of improvement, but we still don't meet state standards. And so the important takeaway from looking back at that is, from our perspective, we need a clear, prioritized, measurable action plan to drive the lake towards meeting state standards that we can implement through coordinated effort as partners. And the 2014 TMDL that the state delivered really gave us that first step towards developing that plan because it established targets for how much pollution needed to be reduced from the landscape that, if met, would see Long Lake's water quality actually meet state standards and respond favorably. It also translated those state standards into measurable obligations. And so this is true of every city in our watershed. You've got obligations to the state to remove a certain amount of pollution coming off of the landscape. And those obligations for cities are based on contributions based on the size of the land area. So how big is the land in the city? And what's the concentration of pollution that might be running off the landscape? And so that's a product of land use. In the 2 years following the publication of the Long Lake's impairment and the TMDL, we're very fortunate that the Long Lake Waters Association formed to improve those water bodies throughout the whole sub-watershed, because there's 5 lakes that are impaired. And I remember attending actually an early meeting, I think, where the PCA was invited to present to residents on the designation and these apportionment of reductions. And really that awareness and then resulting advocacy from Long Lake Waters ultimately led to an initiative among the 3 cities to coordinate and cooperate to address this problem in the form of this intergovernmental resolution that was passed to make progress on the TMDL. And I point all this out because it's water management in Minnesota. We've chosen a really complex way of doing it. We've got cities, the state, the watershed. We want to make sure that there's role clarity. But at this point in time, we weren't actually invited into the resolution of partnership. It was really great to see the city stepping up and saying, we're going to work together on this, and Long Lake Waters champion water quality improvements. Following the establishment of Long Lake Waters, the passage of that resolution, the TMDL, several years of CART management, it was clear that everybody, all the different communities are on the same page in terms of what the objective is. Let's clean up Long Lake. Let's improve water quality. But at that point in time, there really wasn't a plan, an overarching strategy to say who should do what, when, where, and how, and with whose money, to produce what results that could help everybody coordinate. And so after being approached for help, we secured state grant funding and did a sub-watershed diagnostic. And really what that work did is it used field measurements. We went out into different parts of the sub-watershed and we captured flow moving through streams, and we measured what's in those streams, and we're able to identify the sources of nutrients, the sources of pollution. And we broke the geography down into smaller watersheds, these management units. And that helped us begin identifying the location of potential projects that could produce the reductions that are needed. So you can see here, north of Long Lake, you've got that yellow area. That's what you would call the direct drainage area. That's the area that is Long Lake's watershed. But then you have these other peripheral watersheds like Holy Name and Woolsfeld, about 3,000 acres across Orono and Medina, that drain through big tributaries into the lake. And west of Long Lake, you've got about 500 acres of downtown of the city that drain into Long Lake. So we broke the whole watershed into these different tributaries and figured out what's coming from each one so we could locate projects that would make a difference. All that work ultimately became this Long Lake Creek Roadmap, this document here. This roadmap identified priorities, projects, sequence, and responsibilities among the partners, and it was developed in close coordination with the 3 cities and the Long Lake Waters Association, later rolled out to City Council. It translated all that science into an action plan or a roadmap that everybody could follow. I wanted to mention here, we've talked about this offline. When we developed this roadmap several years ago, we didn't have the organizational capacity to lead all of the implementation. So we developed the roadmap and we sort of handed it to cities as a gift. We discussed in the roadmap roles and responsibilities to achieve the load reductions. And I just wanted to pull a few things from page 3 of the executive summary. Cities in here sort of agreed by virtue of working on this to have the responsibility to implement projects and best practices on the landscape. And we had noted that given all the other issues and resource constraints, that then the pace and the scale of implementation would be largely driven by the communities. The district was here really as a technical resource for partners, lead on retrofitting regional stormwater facilities. I'm going to talk about that in a minute, and it's at the heart of the downtown stormwater study. And when the timing was appropriate, a funding source for in lake management. And Long Lake Waters was at the table too. We had a role identified for them with the charge of building community capacity and support for this capital improvement plan. So that's the background. It's like kind of deep history. And in talking offline, it seemed to be valuable because a lot of people have been asking, well, what have we been doing? Where are we? How much progress have we made? So next I want to outline what's actually in the roadmap and the status of the work that's being delivered so everybody knows where we currently sit. And I think that'll give you context for what we're proposing in downtown and how it slots out against work in Medina and Orono. So take a quick breath, see if there's any initial questions about history, and then I'll move you into what the strategies are.
Questions for James at this point?
Yeah, the sub-watershed map that you showed, if you can show that again. So the downtown area there, that's not just Long Lake.
Right.
Right, that there's a significant portion of that that's Orono, correct? That greenish,
Yeah.
yeah. So what you call downtown, I mean, some might think, oh, that's all Long Lake, but it's a combination of Long Lake and Orono.
That's a good point.
Yep.
Yeah, we've got the city boundaries on there, but they're kind of hard to read. So those are those dashed lines, and you guys know the city boundaries better than I do.
Yeah.
But north of that white dashed line is obviously Orono. Some of that drainage comes south through some highway ponds that are further to the east, and then ultimately make their way through Long Lake and into Long Lake.
Right.
Sure. Okay. Any other questions to this point?
Good to keep going.
All right, I guess we can keep moving.
So what's in the roadmap? Well, first of all, it wasn't a collection of sort of random projects scattered across the subwatershed. It really outlined a sequenced strategy. The first priority that we had outlined was let's capture the phosphorus on a regional scale before it reaches streams and lakes through regional infrastructure. These are big stormwater projects, essentially, stormwater management projects. We've seen in other locations they provide the greatest measurable and sustainable reductions. And they create the foundation for a lot of the other work that might be dispersed across the landscape over time. The roadmap called for us to investigate existing regional facilities. I mentioned there's 2 on the north and there's 2 to the west in the city of Long Lake. That's been good common sense practice for the district in other subwatersheds where we've worked with cities and whenever we're working on a comprehensive approach, because we want to look at, well, what are our existing assets that are on existing public land that are maybe nearing the end of useful life that might require maintenance and investment, and how could those be improved and renewed with new science and technology to work better than before? It's just a good place to start. The second layer really focused on landscape restoration. These are more dispersed projects. These could be things like wetland restorations, so changing ponded elevations and wetlands, stabilizing eroded channels and ravines. There's some of those to the north in Woolsfeld Woods, and integrating that sort of work into development or redevelopment or infrastructure investment that's being done by public agencies, namely cities. And so these are important, but we recognized in the roadmap these are going to be driven by opportunities. So if a landowner is working on a sale in a subdivision and we've identified a wetland restoration like we did up at Holy Name, let's work with community development staff and the developer to see if a project can happen through development. But these namely aren't large scale public capital investments. They're opportunity driven, and that's why we identified different regions on the map. The next phase and sequence of work is really restoring upstream shallow lake ecology. So there's a number of lakes upstream, various depths, but a lot of them are shallow, and these don't meet state standards either. So they have dirty water, and that water comes downstream and enters Long Lake. So they both need cleaning up locally, but they're part of what's driving issues down in Long Lake proper. So improving their ecology reduces the nutrient loading coming from upstream before it ever hits Long Lake. And then finally, there's work to be done inside the lake itself to address internal loading. I wanted to really underline this because it's become an important part of the conversation with the community, and want to reinforce here, like I have in other meetings, We really agree that internal management is needed, probably another alum dosing inside the lake. The sediments that are in the lake are nutrient rich because of all the phosphorus that they've accumulated over years. And when it gets hot and dry and there's no oxygen down there, those nutrients come out from the lake bottom, and that contributes to algal blooms too. The question for us isn't whether we should do it or not, it's the timing. And I think one of the things that we've realized over time as a community water resource practitioners is you really want to turn off the source as much as you can from outside of the lake and time that work with when you alum dose it, that you get the most durable benefit out of those investments that are inside the lake as possible. So that's really the sequence. That was the strategy. And coming out of the roadmap, we'd identified the next steps. We said, let's work on County Road 6 and let's look at the stormwater facilities in downtown Long Lake. And that's
How was that funded, the pond water that got on County Road 6
the County Road 6
project? Yeah, how was that funded?
I'm going to get into that, Councilman
Okay.
LaQual, so it's a perfect segue.
Perfect.
It's like you knew what was coming. So since we've completed the roadmap, that's really what we've been focused on. We said, let's get started. So County Road 6 is a regional stormwater pond that the watershed district has easement over from back in the 90s. So we had an ownership over it, some land rights. And this project, this is a before picture. I asked staff for a nice, clean-looking drone picture of the project completed, but we don't have one yet. The pond has been expanded in size, and we've put in a filter bench. This is like new technology, where when that water comes up, it spills over into an area of sand that has drain tile underneath it, and it's taking out more fine particulate and a higher chunk of those nutrients. So the retrofit here gets us an additional 40 pounds of benefit, and that's about 40% of the target from this part of the watershed from Orono. In terms of the funding for this project, this was a combination of district maintenance funds and district capital funds. So this was solely funded by the district, and there's some context as to why that is that I probably won't get into this evening. The next area that we said we should look at aligning and investing in implementation planning is downtown Long Lake, and that's the basis of the study. And one of the reasons for that is even though that downtown area, which is a combination of Long Lake and Orono, as Councilmember Diavik mentioned, even though it's a relatively small area, it's about 500 plus acres, give or take, relative to the 3,000 that comes from the north. It has some of the highest concentrations per unit area of anywhere in the watershed, and that's just a product of land use. So on one hand, you've got large area, low concentrations, and in the other area, you've got small area, high concentrations. And so we know we need to look at the regional facilities in downtown Long Lake as well, and that was the basis for, again, the stormwater study. In parallel with that, the watershed district's been having active conversations with the city of Medina around that upstream work, those shallow lakes and ravine stabilizations. We've begun early feasibility on that shallow lake work, had preliminary conversations with folks like Ducks Unlimited that do this type of ecological restoration around Swamp Lake. And we're discussing with Medina their capital budget through this year's budget program. I understand they have around 170,000 allocated, and we're discussing how much more might be needed over time to try and undertake this raft of shallow lake work over the next 36 to 48 months. We're also monitoring discharge that's coming in and around the Spring Hill Golf Course. We call that the Tamarack Drive area wetlands, and we're monitoring a series of wetlands so we can understand, are there nutrients that are coming out of the golf course or nutrients that are being produced by nearby wetlands? So we'll look at concentrations across a gradient. That might reveal another landscape-based project that we need to complete in Orono. So that's some of the upstream work. And then that work combined would get us towards alum dosing the lake. And that's one of the questions that we heard last year from this community meeting with Long Lake Waters is, what's the minimum viable sequence of project that gets us positioned to see the lake start to meet state standards, and how do we coordinate on these projects to leverage outside dollars from the state? When I met with Councilmember Dybeck, he had asked, how are we measuring progress? And this is one way of how we might think about the projects making progress. On the left, I'm going to try and keep this pretty simple because it's a lot of charts, but on the left, around 700 pounds of reductions that would be needed for the lake to meet state standards. That's broken into 3 rough categories. We've got the watershed load, it's coming from the landscape, those upstream lakes, a reduction needed there by them meeting their standards, and then the internal load. This graph shows, based on monitoring data and models, the estimated progress we think each will make. County Road 6 is done. We're monitoring it to see how well it's performing. With downtown and Woolsfeld, we believe we could get over 50% of the reductions needed from the landscape. Those shallow lake projects, if we get those to meet state standards, those are going to be highly effective in reducing the burden on Long Lake and sending clean water downstream. And then alum dosing as well inside Long Lake. So this isn't all of the projects that need to be done in this subwatershed. This is a near-term implementation strategy that gets us the most return on coordinated investment. We're estimating the suite of projects would get us a 75% progress towards those reduction targets. It's across all sources, and it's across all 3 cities, and it gets us to a point where we believe if we do those things in that sequence, the alum dosing that we need to do in Long Lake will last.
Real quick, the 742 for the left, that's how much comes in on a per time basis?
It's a great question, Councilmember Feldman. It's not how much comes in. This is how much reduction is needed. So you can kind of think about it of like calorie reductions. The diet for the lake, you got to take 700 pounds away in order for the lake to meet state standards, and these are the sources of reduction that you're trying to target.
So like the internal, that is a current snapshot estimated load that's in the lake? Right?
Yeah, the way it
No,
works.
that's how much we have to take out
Yes.
from the internal.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Uh,
It doesn't
that-
mean that you won't have internal loading, and it doesn't mean that you won't still have watershed loading. The TMDL, it literally is total maximum daily load. It's how much pollution you can send to a water body and have it meet standards.
Okay.
So this is saying that, these are the actual reductions that are needed to hit that total maximum daily load. So it gets confusing because of the way that they term everything. So we covered background, we covered kind of short-term, near-term strategy for projects across the subwatershed. That gets us, I think, to the stormwater study and what's in it and what it means for us as partners with the city of Long Lake. But Councilmember Feldman had a good question. We'll see if there's any others about that last chapter that I covered.
Anything else in the last chapter? Part?
Not a question, but I was with some people today who know people at Spring Hill, and I mentioned yesterday that I'd heard a rumor that they were going to shut it down to rebuild, the golf course. And apparently, they're as of last week, they are shut down, and they're planning to I guess do a full rebuild or partial rebuild. So I would just suggest maybe contacting them to see what that plan is. I don't know what it is, but something's happening there. So it would be, good for you to be involved in that process.
Yeah, thank you,
As,
Councilmember.
and how it impacts the lake.
Yeah. At a minimum, if they're literally shut down and doing a project, they'd need a permit. So
But what-
I mean, that's a good point. I mean, I hear rumors all the time, and it's good to dispel the rumors and get to the fact. And like golf courses, people just want to beat up on golf courses. And I'm assuming whenever they do any project, they have to go through Minnehaha Creek to get stuff approved for any type of movement of dirt of any sort, right?
it's a great question. Yeah, so the Watershed District, in addition to our capital investments and policy work, we do run a permitting or a regulatory program. And watershed districts don't have any control really over land use. So the decisions about how land is used are really those with the city. And that's why partnership with communities is so important, because it's land and water. And so typically there's planning, zoning, conditional use permits, PUDs, all that stuff comes through the city. When the use is determined and the project's moving forward, they then have to get watershed permits to make sure that they're managing for environmental issues. And oftentimes there's overlap with cities on that. So things like, we do issue permits for grading and erosion control to make sure that the site's stabilized properly. Wetland impacts and wetland protection. And wetland buffers and essentially setbacks, stormwater management, and floodplain alteration to make sure that we're not sending larger volumes of water downstream by displacing the floodplain. So yeah, we have permitting authority over that sort of work. We've had good luck working with golf courses in the past. I mentioned the councilman. We had a great partnership with what was the Burl Oaks course. I think they rebranded out in Minnetrista, Crooked Water. They realigned all 18 holes, and we were able to integrate around 4 acres of wetland creation into that course that found them some economy of scale on their grading plan. And it's been a good case study for how we can work together when there is an active capital investment being made. Because let's configure it in a way that's maybe good for golf, but gets you some better environmental outcomes at the same time.
Well, at our meeting last week, James, I think you just to highlight, you indicated that your organization monitors, inputs from various areas, and that was one of the ones that you were, areas of the lake that you're monitoring, in the Spring Hill area in addition to other areas. So
Yes.
just want to point that out for those that may not be aware. I know we had a
We should have, unfortunately, to get good monitoring data, gotta rain. And otherwise the streams aren't flowing. So this year's been pretty rough. We got a big rainfall not too long ago, and we were able, our team, when it rains like that and it hasn't been raining, they're on it, whether it's the weekend or not. So they're out there in the rain, making sure we got grab samples. And so we should have results back, which is just a snapshot in time. But it's kind of the best that we've got for this season. I know there's been discussion around the east side because we're not exactly sure what the golf courses are often moving water around for irrigation, what the watershed, the break point is in the golf course, but we have historic monitoring data from the east as well. So we'll be able to look at that and start to make some deductions around, is there a project, is there a partnership if there's a capital investment being made in the course too.
All right, thanks. Any other
Phosphorus
questions?
the only thing we're monitoring for?
Another great question, Councilmember Newcomer. We're monitoring for total phosphorus, suspended sediment, so the actual particles. We're usually measuring for nitrogen. We're taking temperature measurements. The watershed district hasn't made its business to get into contaminants of emerging concern, things like PFAS and those other, because there really is no best management practice to deal with those if they're in the water. We've done chloride monitoring and things like that in the past. The reason that's important in context here is nitrogen's is just as important as phosphorus in certain systems, especially when you're talking about harmful algal blooms. This is a growing trend in the watershed. Long Lake, even though it's unfortunate, isn't alone. Cedar Lake, Bays on Minnetonka, we're seeing algal blooms, and they're driven by multiple variables, not just phosphorus. Phosphorus is a primary limiting factor in freshwater systems, so you want to control it. But once phosphorus isn't limiting, if you got high nitrogen that's coming in from somewhere, that can actually exacerbate harmful algal blooms, and actually a lot of the ones that produce toxins need that nitrogen to do really well. And nitrogen cycling changes if the temperature is warmer. And algae does better in warm water, and we've been having hotter, drier summers and warmer winters over time. We've seen an average winter nighttime temperatures in the last 50 years have warmed 4 degrees. So these are things that probably aren't going away. It's a great question because it's many different things that are acting on. What you see when you go out into the lake isn't just a result of phosphorus, but that is the thing that we're trying to manage for.
All
This is
right, I
great.
guess you can move on to the best part.
You're
right?
asking all the right questions. So that's where we've been. That's the work that we've done together to create the shared roadmap for success. And that's the context, obviously, in which this study sits. Everybody's got a copy. Does anybody want a hard copy, a big hard copy to look through while we go through it? Otherwise, I'll do a
I'll
leave
take
behind.
one. Yeah, I'll do it.
Absolutely.
And you have A big hug.
So yeah, after we completed that roadmap, we were working on County Road 6. Next logical question for us, based on where we're going, is what might implementation look like in the city of Long Lake? We secured $150,000 in state grant funding that followed from the roadmap in coordination with the former city manager. And that was actually money for the city. We've ultimately carried this project forward in close partnership with Amanda this year. And I'm going to walk you through the structure and the highlights. I'm not here to give you a digital page-by-page run-through. You hopefully have had a chance to look through it or scan through it in your packet. And like I said, we're more than happy to come back and dig into details and talk through how some of this work might move forward. So I'm going to orient you to how we laid the document out for you all in the public as an audience. So inside on page 1, before we get into individual projects, we tried to lay out this page where if you're a council member, everything that you need is on page 1. It's got why we're doing this, how it fits in the roadmap, the projects that are recommended, the benefits that they provide, costs, and what we think should happen next to try and advance these projects forward. Ultimately, as part of the stormwater study, we started with 20 potential ideas of projects around the city. So this is more like a stormwater planning exercise than it was looking at one project. Those 20 projects were winnowed down to about 10 or 11. You need a copy? I have one more.
There's one spare here, too.
Here you go. So we took 20 projects, winnowed those down to 10 or 11, and where we've landed on the front end of the study, we didn't give you all the appendices yet, this is still draft, is 5 that have made it into the kind of the above the fold. 2 of those 5 are recommended for implementation. One is, Amanda told me we need to rename. We need to find a good name, so there'll be a naming competition, but the MnDOT Highway Pond that's just across Daniel Street. So when you drive into City Hall, there's a pond here, still looks dry. Retrofitting that pond to expand its footprint, raise the outlet structure, make that perform better because it takes quite a bit of drainage from the south and to the west. And then Nelson Lakeside Park, those ponds that we built in the 90s. There's 3 other projects that are listed in the feasibility study. Holbrook Park, there's some ravines around Holbrook Park's channel. Daniel Street reconstruction and Downtown Village Greenway, which I can talk about. Those 3 projects are recommendations for you to carry forward as you see fit and if you can as part of urban planning recommendations. One is integrating ravine stabilization into a park. One is if and when you ever reconstruct Daniel Street. Pioneer to 6 for somewhere between $2 to $2.7 million. Some of the costs that are in there are baked in. We mentioned this as we chatted offline. For example, the Nelson ponds are in need of maintenance. We estimate the maintenance for those ponds might be somewhere around $500,000. So there's an opportunity to leverage those maintenance dollars into that project cost, improve the park, and expand water quality benefit. So that's one of the things that I mentioned earlier about the benefits of looking at retrofitting existing facilities. So that's page 1. Page 2 gives you the geographic orientation to those projects. Of the fold, downtown the MnDOT pond and the Nelson Lakeside Pond were sort of above the fold here, with those other ones being listed on the lower portion of the page. We've also recommended just broadly that as the city works through redevelopment, we just talked about Spring Hill Golf Course. If you're seeing redevelopment, if you have infrastructure projects, those are opportunities to not only just meet regulatory requirements, go above and beyond, and coordinating through planning and community development, as well as engineering on public infrastructure projects, is something that Long Lake and the watershed should just do as good practice moving forward. And Amanda introduced me to Steve today, so we'll carry that forward. The document then moves into these cut sheets. So there's a little drawing of each idea for the project and then some details behind it. And I think what I'll do is I'll try to cover these quickly, and then we'll just take discussion and questions. So these cut sheets identify the major project elements, and then the details follow. This is the highway pond. So this is, again, just to our south, south of City Hall across the street. Just over 400 acres of area drains through this pond, and we're estimating that retrofitting it, again, that's raising the outlet control structure, changing the permanent pool elevation, doing some grading. If we could get infiltration out of there with some testing, we could get even more benefit, but doing those things that we could get between 17 and 30 pounds of additional benefit for around $800,000 to $850,000. If we were going to start somewhere, this is what we would recommend starting with, is giving staff direction to work with us to go connect with MnDOT, look at site control, start thinking about capital budgeting, how we could chase grant dollars, share these costs, all before we would ever get into design. You know, there's some of those early implementation steps.
Whose responsibility for maintenance of this? Was that MnDOT?
It's a great question, Councilmember Qualley. It's sort of unknown. One of the things that we got asked that question offline.
Property.
What?
It is MnDOT property.
Oh.
Our engineers contacted MnDOT through the process, and their response, which we need to run to ground and lift up, is we're not sure that pond's ours, and you can work on it. I'm not sure that's true. In the past, when I've approached MnDOT and other communities to do work on their land, they usually have an interest in, reserving those rights. But I think it's safe to say that it's in the right of way. It's MnDOT's pond, and it would be their maintenance obligation. Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure that it's going to be as easy as them waving a wand and we're able to just do the retrofit. We'll have to work through some permissions. The point of that project is it's not just a maintenance project. It is making the pond work better than it works today. And so that's the key. The second page just layers in detail. So you got the drainage area maps, the project benefits. That cost that I mentioned is broken down. There's some optional elements as we go through design. Those are the things that you VE out or value engineer out if you need to. And there's some implementation steps. So each cut sheet we've outlined, these are things that we think we could do together with the city to figure out if the project has legs before you jump into just a design contract. And those are some of the things that I just mentioned, so I'm not going to read through them again.
If MnDOT acknowledges that they are responsible for maintenance, then might there be an opportunity to use that maintenance budget to apply towards a redevelopment of that pond, like you're talking about for Nelson, for example, of making it something bigger and better, or better anyway, so that they could be sharing the cost sharing that as well, maybe.
Yeah, that's a great question, council member. I think the way that you framed it, yes, it's possible. Probable, we'll find out. We've done work with the state, regional agencies, local communities in the past. Just south of Highway 12, we were able to work on an old Met Council tertiary wastewater treatment pond. We were able to leverage dollars out of them to do cleanup there. My experience with MnDOT, because I've looked at this over in Crosstown, over by Cedar and 62 or 3562, they always want to make sure that if they ever come back through and do another highway project, that they've got the rights to meet their regulatory obligation. And so if we're going to be investing in there, You know, I'm not sure that they'd invest dollars without being able to reserve those future rights. And that would all be part of the conversation and the negotiation. So I think it's possible. That is probably one of the first steps, is to send us off to go have those conversations and come back to you with, here's what we've heard, here's what the infiltration results say, here's what the cost plan to get those.
Can I clarify one thing? I think it's important to note that the now is not serving, it's not serving the need for us as a community. Right now, it's not designed to do that. So what this project would do is it would design it to work better for our need. Right now, it's simply, it's there to, you know, for MnDOT's purposes. So we would be asking to have it retrofitted, you know, to assist our city in
kind
with
of-
our needs. And so it's right now the pond hasn't, you know, it's not serving a value. It's not that MnDOT's not maintaining a pond and that's what's causing the problem. It's not, it wasn't designed for our,
It wasn't designed to originally collect
yes.
phosphorus.
Correct. It was runoff, I believe, from the highway.
Okay.
MnDOT's position with regard to the sound wall has always been that they don't conduct maintenance unless there's a public safety hazard. So I wonder if their position on that pond would be the same.
How about the public safety of the gate?
So
Good
we would be
point.
looking at taking something that's there, and trying to retrofit it to our needs.
To create
To
function.
create functionality for our city. Whereas right now, it doesn't serve us.
So it
much.
doesn't sound like that's something that they would willingly invest, be a partner for investment.
We just
And
have
these
to
are
be
all quite-
cautious.
There's not much point in speculating. I mean,
Yeah.
we've worked in partnership with MnDOT before. You know, the right circumstances have to align. So we have to go have that, I think we should have that conversation. We're here tonight framing all this and asking the council, are you interested in staff taking some of these next exploratory steps to bring that information back to figure out if we've got a viable project? So I think you're asking all the right questions. I don't have all the answers tonight. That's part of the next steps. I'll tick through the next project. This is the Nelson Lakeside Park restoration. Again, open to naming. This is the second project that we would recommend taking those implementation steps on. To briefly orient you, and this isn't shown on the picture, this is what could be. Down in Nelson, now, there are 2 stormwater ponds. Those were built in the 90s. They're on city land. I believe the city acquired that land a long time ago with land and water conservation funding, which is like federal grants that go to the DNR, which has deed restrictions around what you can and can't do with that park long-term. Water management is one of the things that you can do. So those are ponds that we have easement over and are responsible for maintaining, but they're actually on city property. We have maintained those in the past. Mentioned to Councilmember Divek, we own about 20 to 25 stormwater facilities across 29 communities, and they're on a rotation where we've inspected them. We can predict when they fill up and when they need to be maintained. These ones both need to be maintained. The main pond to the north and to the west needs more maintenance than the other one, but you'd want to go in there and do them at the same time anyway. Maintaining those, expanding their footprint is something that we're suggesting, and it could put those maintenance dollars that we have to better use than just cleaning the ponds out. There's also closer to the road where the main stream channel comes in right now, there's a city-owned stormwater facility inside the park too. It's a drainage swale, and in talking to Sean in Public Works, it really doesn't work and hasn't been maintained and has a lot of challenges associated with it because of how it was conceived. We would suggest expanding the 2 ponds that we maintain, eliminating that filter system, and
Which
adding
ponds do you maintain?
these 2 ponds right here.
Oh, okay.
So these ones closer to Lake Councilmember are district responsibilities. In this area here, there's kind of a linear, if you look at an area of a linear stormwater feature, that's the city's responsibility. It's essentially defunct and not working. And a lot of that is the volumes of flows, what's in it, and how that system was designed. We would recommend essentially creating a wetland treatment system here and taking this channel that comes into the park and goes straight through this pond and meandering it is both a feature and a slow down and treat the water, which could then be part of your main pedestrian circulation and placemaking inside the park. It did require some reconfiguration of uses with the frisbee golf, but that could be done in a really exciting way. And so some of the next steps here are technical with geotech work, but also if we wanted to move that forward, we'd obviously want to be doing some community engagement with the folks that are programming the park, Barkhorn Days, Lions Club, people that are using the park on a daily, people that are throwing discs out there playing disc golf.
Yeah, James thinks, yeah. We just, thanks. All right, good question there, thanks.
So would you, in terms of, it seems like there's a lot here based on the price tag. Could you do it, could you stage it in terms of just having the ponds and kind of, and the other question I had, how did Minnehaha Watershed District get responsibility for the maintenance of the ponds? How did that work?
You guys must have been shrewd negotiators back then. Sure. It's a great question, Councilmember. I don't know the answer to that. I don't have the lore and the history on it. It's in every community where we're doing projects. As you go through the design and before you bid it to construction, we negotiate what are the built elements, the water elements, who's responsible for maintenance long-term. And so we really have taken a tailored approach across communities. And so we've done recent park projects in Hopkins with Cottageville. Arden Park won some national awards recently in Edina. We did a ecologically based park out in Victoria that manage and treat stormwater, and each one is subject to negotiation. And I'm assuming that's the way it worked back in the 80s and 90s. And we simply took the maintenance obligation for it, and that's been ours since. To your other question, I mean, yeah, in terms of strategy for implementation, any project where you've got limited resources and you've got different goals, the public space creation as well as cleaning the water, you want to look at phased implementation as well as economy of scale. Is it cheaper to do it today versus inflationary costs of money, as well as what your goals are? So I think phasing the implementations would definitely be possible for something like this, the way that the concept's segregated anyway, and it might be a really smart thing to do.
Yeah, and, you know, we talked about, like, we were at Zavago last night for night, and they're very tuned into what's going on in our community, and some residents had looked at this already, and we're very excited about the concept of a path, you know, a bridge coming from there, the complex to get down to the park easier, but, you know, maybe there's cost sharing, you know, options for that too, with some of those things like we talked about I talked about this last week, the stormwater project is the priority, but then, you know, path improvements and bridge improvements and things like that, there may be some other options for that.
And in all the conversations leading up today with city staff and Amanda's finance background and both Councilmember Minor and Dyvik, I mean, we recognize every community is different, and we work within, you know, what your fiscal constraints are. We're going to be looking at state grant dollars. So again, I wanted to be really clear. We're not here looking for a signature on a dotted line, and a commitment is part of the conversation of these are things that we think are opportunities. These are the ones that we think should go first in this sequence. And we're looking for general interest and appetite for long-term partnership with the watershed to start taking the necessary next steps to figure out if we can move these forward together. Obviously, part of that is always money. So that would be some of the work in the next steps in parallel with technical is like, how could this come to fruition with staging, with outside money, with the district's contribution, with money from other partners. And so those would be part of the conversations we'd carry forward.
So just a quick question. When you say partnership, so it would be a money partnership, sharing resources, everybody contributes, but in terms of engineering, managing the project, who would be involved with that? Like,
yeah, that's a great question. And Councilmember, I think what's really important in the district's model isn't always, I want to be careful because you guys are obviously shrewd negotiators, and I don't want to negotiate against myself in front of my board chair, but, right, Sherry? Yeah, we'd be looking for financial contribution, but we're not here looking for the city to bear the cost. It's about ownership. It's so important to us that the city values the work, understands why it's needed, and wants to participate. Historically, when we did the work, and maybe this is the way it was in the 90s, we'd come into communities, even during my tenure, and we want to do a project, and we're just trying to move it forward on our own. And it's sort of off over here. One of the approaches that we've taken with our balanced urban ecology vision is recognizing water creates identity. That's certainly true in Long Lake, with the lake organizing the central identity for several communities. And we see land and water needing to be planned together, and we do our best work when cities are at the table and want the work and are invested in it. That doesn't always have to be an exorbitant price tag. In terms of the project management, those are the things I think we really bring to the table that's often an asset for the city. You have many other priorities. You might have your staff working on other things. Some communities have, we're working in Minneapolis. Their priorities right now are not our water quality projects. They're asking us to design, do project management, bid, construction administration, essentially manage the project. So those are things that we're certainly willing to bring to the table.
I'm just curious how that all worked,
Yeah,
when you drill down a little bit.
great question. Did I answer it?
You did. I like the part where you said, the city wouldn't be the solely responsible for the estimated project cost.
We're not here to sell a project and get you guys to pay for everything. It's really about this is how we see these projects supporting long-term sustainability in your community for the shared goal of the lake, and how they fit in that broader strategy with the work that we have to go off and do with Medina or potentially in Orono, and how all that can come together. And we're actively having those conversations. We'd met with Orono last week about starting to begin capital budgeting and funding planning. We've been invited to go to their city council. It's budget season to start these discussions of when the projects are found or when alum dosing is needed. Where's Orono going to be? We're having those conversations with the Medina. So that's another thing that I think we're positioned to do as a regional, special purpose, water-focused unit of government, is trying to be the bridge between the three communities. They're all working towards the same goal. Those are the two, and I've been up here for a really long time, I think. So there's three others. I said they were below the fold. I'm going to stop and just see if there's other questions and discussion. Otherwise, you have all the information in your packet. I feel like we covered a lot already.
So was the other one, go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say, I think it's exciting to, I'm just looking at the pounds per dollar in some of these projects. These first few you talked about, the first one's double the second, and the second's double the third. So it's cool to see that there are projects that are a lot more effective per dollar that, we potentially could start chipping away at. And I guess one thing is, you look at the total dollar amount, we're a small city. It's many multiples of our annual levy, right?
Yep.
So it'd be really interesting in what kind of grant money and how these partnerships are gonna come together. It's just the reality is, a little city like us, we can't foot the bill, but I think there's appetite to contribute. I'll speak for myself there, but it's if there's a team that wants to play this game, that would be exciting.
Mm-hmm. That's great to hear. And yeah, we do this with all of our communities, funding strategy. So we have variety of tools, variety of strategies, not just outside money, whether it's we have master finance agreement with Hennepin County for bond issuance, capital and their AAA rating. We've provided short-term, sort of 5-year financing. We just did that in the city of Victoria, where they wanted elements integrated into a project, and we're providing that at kind of low, no interest. So there's contribution, and then there's like the public financing tools, and those are the things that make a funding strategy. And you've got to start there and figure out what your plan is for funding the project while you advance some of the technical work. And I think those are the next steps that we would work on with your team.
So in an ideal world, when would these two projects, occur? I think maybe you're thinking 29 or 30 from last week, or change?
Good question. I think rate partnership, money, permitting, site control. We've got partnership, sounds like. I think we've got close to site control in Nelson because we have easements and it's your land. We need to talk to MnDOT about site control, and then there's funding. That, depending on who you're working with and how resource constrained we are, could take 6 months, could take 18 months, because you got to have the money to put the project together. Once we're there, and we can, feel confident in starting a design construction, I don't want to overcommit Mike. I think 24 months, 12 months through design, a season for construction. So it is conceivable that you get through this work in 3 years. I mentioned this yesterday to Councilman Rodivik. It's kind of a blue sky scenario, and it often rains. So, doing both of these projects in parallel is possible. Doing these projects in parallel with the ones in Medina is possible, but we have to put together a plan. And that's why I think starting with the MnDOT one makes the most sense, because it's got less moving parts.
That seems like such delightfully low-hanging fruit to hit
Yeah.
right there.
Just with the performance per dollar, it seems off the charts compared to
And
some
we
of the-
actually talked about this at our meeting. My vision that I would bring to council for that, as he mentioned, that we're not in the design phase right now of anything, we're just to see if there's an appetite from council. But my vision for that specific pond would be to eliminate all aesthetics. There wouldn't be a cute
Yeah.
little overlook, there wouldn't probably be any foliage, we wouldn't do trees. I'm sorry. Add that to next week's meeting. We would be looking at functionality. I would like to get that pond functional as a priority. I think that would be something right now, right away that we could financially start.
Yeah.
And I also think that it'd be really good for our residents to start seeing that we do care as a community. Like, granted, yes, they're gonna look at a swamp pond across the street and maybe not understand how that will impact the lake, but I don't want a tree or aesthetics to financially halt any projects that can have amazing results. And so it's a no-brainer. I think if we work together and try to see if MnDOT can get something to us in writing, then it's the first step. It's a really good
I would
first step.
concur, because I don't think this is, I don't even think people visit this area or know it exists.
And it's always, when you're speaking phase, like this specific area, it's an area that if we ever in the future had to add aesthetic, anything, we could. But let's get it functional. Let's do what we can timely, financially, and then look at other areas such as Nelson to put our stamp on.
It's occupational hazard. I've just learned the hard way. You can't employ the services of a landscape architect to draw you a
Right, exactly.
without getting an overlook or a bench.
Yes.
Yes.
Coffee filter.
And the funny thing is the reality for folks who have walked that sidewalk, we have a pretty darn good view out of it at our front door. And actually, that's really the best place to see the highway, which is not really,
Yeah,
a
they
lot
don't
of
have
people
that in
don't
the
go
picture.
to an overlook to see the
Right.
cars whizzing by in the background or the, or the trains. So I think that those would be really safe eliminations with the focus on function, which just enables the project to,
I'm just looking at 35 pounds per $1 million.
Right.
yes,
That's
Yes.
that's effective.
yeah.
And I'll
So you-
remind council, I did, on our budget today during our work session, I mentioned that some of the reasons I put things in our CIP was for this presentation, because it's something that I personally think is gonna be a wonderful asset to the city of Long Lake. And I think a partnership with the watershed is long overdue, and I think that it's something that I prioritize. And so I am already starting to figure out what we can do as a city to add it in our budget.
I have a question for you too, and is this where does this water come from that's in this, I'm gonna just call it the MnDOT property? Is that coming from Holbrook? It comes from Holbrook? And because I know that was an issue, and I think when I first joined the council, Minnehaha Watershed District came to a meeting, and there was money, and they were gonna get grants to fix Holbrook Park.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think you asked the same question last time I was here. So. The money that we got for the downtown feasibility study was really about, if I go back all the way to those maps where we said we should look at regional stormwater management inside downtown Long Lake. After we built the roadmap with state grant funds, we went back to the state and said we'd like money for the city of Long Lake to do a project study, and it was really for Holbrook. We've turned it into looking at Holbrook, but looking at the whole city. So
Okay.
it's, rather than just looking at that one project, which actually turned out pretty
okay.
good because it's not really viable, and the Mindot Pond and Nelson are really where the action is. So this is the same work under another name.
Oh, okay.
But then in addition to going under the highway from Holbrook, isn't there also runoff from Highway 12 that goes into there, I'm assuming as well?
Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
yeah. So, yeah, hence the MnDOT connection too when it comes to that, I would hope.
Yeah, the drainage areas are in the schematics, so you can kind of take a closer look at how large of an area is, and you know your geography, just where exactly that water's coming from.
I think these are good plans, and I know we're not talking about funding right now, but I can't help but think about, cost and what our contribution would be. And after we talked yesterday, I feel I really would like this partnership to be Orono and Long Lake and Minnehaha Creek Watershed District and Medina, and MnDOT. But funding-wise, I think about if there's an improvement, and you talked yesterday, it's hard to get a city to pay for a project in another city, I think you said.
Yeah, it can be.
Yeah, it can be hard. But if we are doing work that's going to improve the quality of Long Lake to the benefit of Orono, then I think that they ought to, participate in that cost, even if the work is being done in this case in the city of Long Lake, or in a MnDOT pond that isn't part of Long Lake. I think there should be sort of this collective,
You're basically saying water flows downhill.
Yeah.
There are people downhill.
Right, but.
It actually does here in this situation.
And I said this yesterday too, you've already done the County Road 6 project, happen to be in Orono, they happen to not have to pay any of that. I just think that they should have skin in the game because we're trying to improve the lake quality, right, the water quality. And that's to their benefit as it is to ours. And I just would like to see, not that we're gonna try to fund, that you're going to fund part of it, and we're going to fund part of it. I'd like to see Orono fund part of this too, but I don't know how difficult that might be. But I think, and earlier when I was talking about your sub-watershed district that showed the downtown, they've got hard cover too in that sub-watershed district that you showed, right? With whatever's north of Wayzata Boulevard, that's all Orono, once you get west of Zago. And or the bank, and so they're contributing to that too. So that water happens to be then coming through the Nelson Lakeside Park ponds, and so why not have them participate in that? But that might be for a discussion for another day. And I just would like to see this not just be, well, we have these ponds that we have to try to improve, which I completely agree with. And we have to foot our part of that bill, and then you'll contribute whatever you might plan to do. But I just feel like Orono should be part of that too.
So do you have,
Perhaps it's more projects in Orono,
Yeah, but there's not the big project is done in Orono
Yeah.
right now.
And
And I know that this is something you said earlier that Long Lake. That downtown district has the high concentration, smaller area,
Yeah.
but higher concentration, whereas like on the north side of Long Lake, which is Orono, is smaller concentration, but there's more area. So if you look at absolute numbers of, when you're measuring
Yep.
pounds of phosphorus or whatever, you're probably getting still a lot of pollutants coming in so I don't want there to be this perception like, here's where the problem is because it's a high concentration. Yeah, but there is lower concentrations in other areas, but much bigger areas. So
Yeah.
So I mean, I don't know what the absolute numbers would be, but you know what I mean? I mean, so we have just a small part of the lake shore, but a high concentration, and they have a
Yes.
big part of the lake shore and lower concentration. So,
So there's really two different issues, is the aggregate amount of phosphorus or whatever coming into the lake, and that's multiplied by your
yeah.
concentration per, but then I
Yeah.
think the question is what's the effectiveness per project?
Yeah, now maybe
Or-
the County Road 6 project is going to, deals with that in a large part. You know, and, but there's still, and then all of the upstream stuff like you were talking about that Medina's addressing, which is great. I think that's, sounds like they're working to try to improve that situation for their own benefit, and that would also benefit Long Lake. The lake itself. So anyway, I just would like to see kind of I don't know, a partnership among the three cities. So,
James, you want to get a word in edgewise? on
Yeah.
that?
I did all the talking. It was very efficient. I just want to say to Councilmember Divek, I mean, he's absolutely right. I mean, that's a great grasp on like exactly how it's working in terms of area and concentrations, and the science tells us then where to put the projects, and then there's these public policy questions across communities and with the watershed, which is taking tax dollars from 29 cities, Minneapolis and Orono and Medina and Victoria, and able to be here as a partner. And there's this question that you're raising, which I think is a legitimate question of what are the sources of funding to address the shared objective? And if the best project is located here, and that's the one that we have left, I think that's a fair question to raise. I hear you. I think it's a good conversation to have with the city of Orono, and we're committed to carrying that conversation forward. We chatted yesterday about, as we make the rounds introducing these concepts, a lot of background to just get people up to speed. You're dealing with police and fire, you're dealing with road improvements, it's budget season. Water, you know, maybe we're trying to get everybody on a level playing field, but later this year, what we want to do, I think, is get council members and staff together from those cities and have some of these conversations. So we're going to keep working on it between now and then, and I just want to let you know we heard you, and I think we're going to carry that forward.
So how was the County Road 6 pond? And you may have already
Yeah.
answered this question, but what was the funding formula for that?
That's relatively unusual, which is what Councilmember Divek's picking up on, is we didn't get grant dollars for that. It was 100% sole source through the district's ad valorem levy. We almost never do that. We're usually getting grant dollars from the state, we're getting local partner contributions. There was a context at the time in terms of the receptiveness of the council to wanting to work with us. It was hard enough to go through council, present, and get a resolution of support for us to do that project on land that we had easement for. And we knew the community demand was there for clean water, and so we made a strategic choice. And we chose to do the project and finish the project so that we could show progress. And so it was district funded.
All right.
Does the district have any money left?
We've got some resources that we can bring to the table for our work in Long Lake.
I had a question about I mean, I know there's a lot of hard cover in the industrial area. How much of that is pollution necessarily in particulates from the industry versus organics that are decaying in the street and making their way in?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's really a product of the land use, not what's inside the building, if that's what you're asking. These aren't like industrial contaminants that are coming from outside the building. This is, when you have hard cover, you know, if you think about what roof materials are made of in industrial landscapes, and the blacktop and the deterioration of concrete and asphalt and all of the petroleum products and things that are in there, as that breaks down and you've got more lane miles and brake dust, all that stuff is aggregating, sorry, I got excited, attaching the sediment and then flowing into, you know, from stormwater runoff into your curb and gutter and into the lake. So it's not from industry per se, it's a product of how the land is built. Yes.
Yeah. And I'm kind of random here, but how effective is street sweeping in helping get rid of some of this?
It's all about timing and location. So there's a variety of studies if the council's interested in that. Prior Lake, MnDOT, others. It's the University of Minnesota is a best practice. So there are things that you could do as a city to enhance what you're already doing within your current capabilities. There's different types of equipment, timing of the year, frequency, those sorts of things can make a significant difference, and those are just operational best practices.
I know we're doing more street sweeping than we used to
have a
do,
street
because we
sweeper
have one
now,
now. Yeah, our public works director loves driving that around and sweeping. So,
Do
Any-
you guys do ride-alongs?
yeah, I'm sure we can work something out, right? Any other questions for James? Comments?
No, I'd just like to say, James, fantastic presentation. Taking
Thank you.
taking a very complicated subject that are a lot of
Yes.
people who have different opinions and are confused on, and you've simplified it very well.
Thank you so much. We appreciate your time.
Between yourself and the presentation, that helps a lot to understand a complex problem. And I was really glad to hear you say at the very end that, in the future, I think you're doing this presentation for Orno and for us and to get all the players in one room at one time to brainstorm and allow you to field these questions at one time instead of repeating it. I would look forward to seeing that in the future,
Fantastic.
the soon future.
Yeah, before the end of the year.
Yeah, and
Yeah, I mean, it's the longer we stretch it out, the more presentations you have to do repetitively. Let's get the players in a
You
room.
just convinced me.
I know, well, it's a good presentation, and to do it once and effectively, that would be, yeah.
And if this thing gets legs, and I hope it does, and starts moving forward, we talked yesterday about maybe having a committee of representatives, elected officials, and staff from each of the cities and the watershed district, to sort of, meet on a semi-regular basis to sort of monitor how things are going and communicate that back to our cities. And
That's right. We've found, and again, we try to tailor our work because we work with 29 communities. Some of them are townships, to what the needs are. We've found great effect with that in other areas that have some jurisdictional complexity. We're out in 6 Mile. It's 27 square miles, 2 counties, 3 Rivers Park District, townships, cities in Hennepin and Carver County. You got to get everybody at the table, and we're doing the same thing in Minneapolis with the city and the park board. And it helps to have staff and policymakers in alignment, because policymakers are making decisions about the money and the direction of the city, and staff are doing the technical work. So we're doing a lot of the one-on-one and the council briefings right now to get everybody grounded, because if you do get everybody together, you want to make sure that, to your point, that we're not going through all the background. We want to get into decision mode. So we're doing that right now, and I do think at some point it would be helpful to have whether it's a committee or a task force, but some liaisons from the respective councils and staff get together and say, look, this is where we're at, this is the plan, let's all work on it together.
Well, I would start small. That's just, because it seems sometimes if it's too grandiose, you can't find the funding.
And that's why we're making the round,
Yeah.
talking about capital budgeting in Orono, capital budgeting in Medina, making this presentation. So when we get together, we have traction, and it's not pie in the sky.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I like the idea of getting a council member from each city in the same room, just so.
Yeah.
We can beat up on MDOT. Didn't say that out loud.
All right, so you're not looking for a motion here per se, just direction from the council to
Support.
support the project, specifically starting with the MnDOT Pond project, for lack of a better term, I believe.
I would concur with that.
Okay, yeah, I agree. So I think there's consensus on that from the council that would like staff to pursue this opportunity and further research the options and costs of the project. All right, I think you got direction.
Sounds good.
Fantastic, and thank you, James, and thanks. Thank you. Before I'll leave Long Lake Waters Association, thanks to your partnership on this as well with all of this and the members. And, yeah, one just ran out, but hopefully she heard me, and the Watershed District as well.
Thank you so
All
much.
right, thank you, James. Okay, so then do 8 other business. Go around the dais here. Councilmember Newcomer.
Nothing for me. Enjoying the throes of summer. So, looking forward to this weekend and the parade and the candy.
Yeah,
It'll be good.
yeah, great. All right, Councilmember Feldman.
Nothing, I was gonna mention the pinning, but you already did that, so that was exciting to see the fire department off and running, and, it's been a long road, but got there.
It sure was, and great equipment, so great job by the fire board with, working on some of those details and getting them the new uniforms and all that kind of thing. It really looked great. Yeah, Councilmember Dybek.
Are we still taking down ash trees in the city?
We're done for the season. We have exceeded our budget.
So,
We're
in
done
Laker, I
contracting
don't know
out
if you
anyway.
saw this article in the Laker Pioneer, but it said DNR offering $1.7 million in grants to address emerald ash borer impacts. So is that something we could apply for?
Charlie sent me a information on a grant, and I was actually just bringing it up to Sean this week, and I will verify if that's the same.
I'll leave this with you, but
Okay.
it's a DNR grant. It says applications open August 3rd for the
Sounds about right.
2026 Protect Community Forest grants.
Okay, that might have been the one that you had sent me. We were just actually mentioning, I believe that at today's staff meeting,
And
that had come up, so.
it closes September 14th, so
I'll be here soon.
send that down there. It was in the Laker
Thank you.
Pioneer, which I now subscribe to.
Hey, good.
Is that a real newspaper?
Want to miss edition?
Oh, the Lake of Pioneer.
Wow.
Great stuff.
That's all I
Anything
have.
else?
Yeah, that's all.
All right, I gave a lot of updates at the beginning, so nothing else from me. I just looking forward to this weekend, long week of events, and,
Nothing for me.
okay.
I just wanted to let council and the residents know that this week, our Public Works Director met with the Minnesota Department of Health to assess our technology vulnerability after cyber attack that had happened to some of our neighboring communities. I am proud to announce that we do not have any vulnerabilities at this time because of the regularity of changing our passwords. Sean did mention it's because he never can remember his password, therefore he always has to change it. Nevertheless, they were happy to let us know that we were not vulnerable to this attack. So I was pleased to hear that. And yes, Buckhorn Days was a wonderful event. Jeanette and I attended. We had a booth, and we're already talking about opportunities for next year. We also attended 19 Unite last night, which was wonderful to get to talk to the residents. I think we probably had the most walk-in voters today that we've had so far because I think they saw Jeanette and they were like, oh, I gotta go see her. So yes, it was a wonderful night. And then the pinning ceremony Monday was really cool. And they did a push-in of Engine 11. So I'd never seen that before. So that was a treat to watch. And then we'll see everyone this Saturday at Corn Days.
Yeah,
That's all we have.
and you're working on getting some candy
I'm
for
going
us
tomorrow to Sam's Club. Yes, I have
Great.
I have a plan. So
Great. All right, and the healthy candy, right?
that's not what I'm picking.
No, there will be no apples.
Well, the fire department is buying a lot of candy too.
Yes, but now I am respecting the fact that we're completely separate,
Oh, right, okay.
and so Long Lake will be buying our own candy, as not to intrude on their budget.
That one of the things you can never have enough of.
Right, right,
Yes, I will be getting our own candy tomorrow.
okay.
So that is all I have.
So what's the plan for how we're gonna,
Yes, so just to clarify, our shoreline, our two representatives from our shoreline board, yourself
Yeah.
and Mayor
Awesome.
Thunheim,
Yeah.
will be riding with the shoreline fire department. He's thinking a boat. He's like, do they want to be visible? I said, yeah, they want to be visible.
boat?
So you might be on a boat.
I thought it was gonna be Engine 11 or something.
Well, he said that was an option, so if you would like that, that's an option.
I think the boat would be fine.
I think the boat would be kind of cool. So, like I said, that's up to you. So the two of you will be representing our shoreline board, and then any council members and myself will be participating. We will be walking the parade, so wear our walking shoes. And this year, one of our public works vehicles will be in the parade.
Okay.
I sent the banner with Sean today, so he should be getting that ready. And then Jeanette will be here administering early voting.
And did we, is the Studebaker gonna be used, or?
We've decided not to use the Studebaker this year. As Brian mentioned, yes, it is historical and so forth. However, I thought this was a good opportunity to showcase our public works, one of our public works vehicles, and
Street
include
sweeper?
Yes, I don't know what it's gonna be. So
Should be the last.
I'm kind of giving Sean full reign, and he will be joining us. So I thought it was a great
that's neat.
opportunity for him to participate with us. So we're really trying to get city staff to be together. So we will have a public works vehicle. I don't know which one it is. And yes, you will be.
It's the front end loader. I'm going to be really sad I'm missing it. 'cause
Jeanette keeps
I wanna
trying to
ride
get us in the bucket. So I was like, I don't know about the bucket.
The bucket can hold the candy.
Okay, I'm hearing work comp issues though from her situation, so yours might be more. And there's not that much candy. The budget's small. We've got a watershed partnership to deal with. So that will be our plan for Corn Days. Wish me luck.
Great. Look, and look, weather looks to be perfect, by the way, knock on wood. So if nothing changes.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, Jeanette. Once again, she will be here administering early voting.
Yes, thank you for holding down the fort, literally.
Yes.
Anything else, Jeanette?
Minnesota primary election day next Tuesday. The election judges are very excited. They'll be here earlier than when the polls open and close, but polls are open 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. We'll probably be getting your start to the day around 6 a.m. with me just a little bit before that, and we'll be here all day, and they can't wait to welcome everyone, so it'll be fun.
Great. Thanks for all you do with that. All right. So our next meeting is going to be on Tuesday, August 18th. So 13 days from today. All right. Last call, anything else? All right, if there's no objection, I'll adjourn the meeting by general consent. Hearing none, meeting's adjourned at 8:19 p.m.